how corporate greed is ruining music. Chev, Hogwarts getting multiplayer. Yeah, cap, buddy. Cap, buddy. That is a load of cap, buddy.
This chart right here shows the percentage of Billboard Hot 100 #1 hits with a key change. From the 60s to the 90s, there are tons of #1 songs with key changes. However, after the 90s, we see a steep decline. And by the 2010s, there are virtually no key changes in popular music.
First off, shout out my boy, Daddy Balls.
Whatsoever. Many attribute this lack of a key change to new genres like rap taking over popular music or the recent prominence of the use of computers in recording. But my mind shot to something else when I saw this, and that was corporate greed. It's no secret that record labels promote generic music because they know it will sell. In fact, it's pretty well known. But I was wondering how we got here. I was wondering what changed between the 60s and the 2010s that led to this generic music. Well,
you know what happened? Social media. You know why? Because the more simple that it is to listen and follow along, the more it's accessible to a wider audience, including especially kids, bro. If you saying basic stuff that people can understand, it's not too complex. Like, you're not out here talking about real shit and how the world needs to change and how gun violence and the streets and all this boring shit that like people don't want to hear while they're driving to work or some shit like that. And you talking about things that people wish they could do if if they had it like that, like fucking bitches, getting money, and how you just blew a check on this, that, and the third. That's what is accessible, and that's what people like, bro. That's what people literally flock to.
Well, to understand that, we must first take a look at the origins of the music industry. The music industry technically began in the 1400s with printed sheet music, but none of that is really relevant at all because the music industry really began to pick up steam after the invention of the phonograph in the late 1800s. One of the first labels to ever sign an artist was Victor Talking Machine Company in 1904, which signed an artist for $4,000 plus 40 cents per sale. As technology advanced, many different eras of listening methods did as well. Records, cassettes, and CDs were the most popular methods for a long time, and as these devices sold more and more, record labels began to see the amount of potential in the music industry. The music industry experienced a big boom, and labels began investing a lot more money into artists. The album format began to flourish, along with the popularity of rock and roll, and it generated a lot of money for the industry.
The CD boom was from '84 to 2000. You actually had to drive your car to the Tower Records and buy a CD for
Sorry, did he say car?
84 to 2000. You actually had to drive your car to the Tower Records.
Okay, chat. What location is that where they talking like that? You actually have to drive your car to the store. Canadian? Okay.
And buy
Ireland? Wisconsin. What did I ask, chat?
A CD for $18 to get the one song you liked. And so that was a good model. It made the industry tons and tons of cash.
As profits for record labels began to grow, they gave artists larger advances to invest and experiment more with their music. The reason that I'm bringing all of this up is to emphasize how important physical
K. Pearson, thank you for the sub! Maddie B, continue. Maddie Balls, continue.
Copies of music were. To get into stores and to get people to listen to your music, you needed to be with a record label, because record labels were in charge of producing and distributing the music. Of course, you could do this independently, but it was a lot harder. And record labels were also in charge.
Damn.
Of course, you could do this
handing out the CDs. Yo, now what you could do with how technology is, which I don't suggest you do this because it's weird and kind of invasive, is they have a thing where you can just tap somebody's phone and like a link tree will pop up automatically on your phone. That shit is crazy. Or yeah, post it on TikTok, shit like that now.
independently, but it was a lot harder. And record labels were also in charge of marketing. For a long time, record labels were extremely important and the industry was generating a ton of revenue. However, that would all change with the introduction of the internet. Not only did the internet shake up the music industry, but it shook up everyone's lives. Nowadays, almost everyone is extremely dependent on the internet, so it can be scary to think that hackers could easily access your information. That is why this video is sponsored by Surfshark. Surfshark is a VPN that can keep your online identity safe and secure by encrypting the data that you send between your device
ad, man. W transition. I ain't even see it coming.
Surfshark is a time at midnight just to listen to some music. Link in the description below and use code MattyB to get Surfshark right now. Anyways, back to the video. If you look at total revenue for recorded music on the RIAA's website and adjust for inflation, you will see that revenue peaked in 1999, along with CD sales peaking that same year. That's because in 1999, Sean Fanning created and released a program called Napster. As the internet was becoming more popular in the late 90s, Fanning thought the future of music would be online. So he created a MP3 sharing service called Napster that allowed users to access MP3s on other users' hard drives. And even though Napster was quickly shut down due to copyright issues, many other websites began to take its place, and people were able to email songs to each other with ease. Thanks to copyright laws, most of these free music sharing websites were shut down quickly, but people still wanted the ability to listen to free music whenever they wanted.
We didn't really factor in the consumer adoption, the youthful lack of respect for copyright, and the anonymity would combine to make it pretty unstoppable as a model.
CD sales began dropping and the music industry's gross revenue was falling rapidly. Because of this, Steve Jobs introduced the iTunes Music Store, allowing people to directly buy songs from the label/artist. It was really the only option that labels had because otherwise people would continue pirating music and emailing songs back and forth. So the labels went with the iTunes Store, but that didn't last too long either. Labels needed a way to make money because from 1999 to 2015, total revenue within the recording industry was on a steep decline. Previously, record labels were essential for distributing music to the customer, but with the age of the internet, that was no longer the case. So record labels needed a way to make themselves useful again, otherwise they would be left in the dust. So in 2006, Spotify swooped in to revolutionize the music industry. Spotify was very similar to Napster and other related websites, but Spotify wanted to find a...
What do y'all use more, Spotify or Apple Music? I love Spotify, bro. I love Spotify.
Better way to both monetize and legally relay the music. To get Spotify off the ground, many deals had to be made with record labels to get their music onto the app. In order to license their music, labels would take a large cut of both subscription and ad revenue.
Wait, people still use SoundCloud?
And because Spotify was licensing their music from record labels, the labels essentially had control of Spotify. The big three record labels, Warner, Sony, and Universal, also own 18% of Spotify, so they have a ton of power when it comes to decision making. And according to some statistics, record labels today actually control over 70% of Spotify playlists. Here's a chart that shows how people listen to music, with over 50% of the musical consumption coming from streaming services. And since labels have a lot of control over streaming services, it's very easy for them to push their music. On top of that, radio...
Who is that? And is that Charlie Armadillo?
Over streaming services, it's very easy for them to push their music. On top of that, radio accounts for 16% of the musical consumption, and it isn't too hard for labels to get their songs on the radio. Technically, it's illegal for labels to pay for their music to be put on the radio, but they found ways around it through programs like On The Verge or other loopholes. And if you look at the music industry's revenue, it's began to climb back up ever since 2015 thanks to the rise of these streaming services. And also, since labels were losing so much money following 1999, they started taking larger percentages of revenue shares and also introduced 360 deals, essentially allowing them to have more control over their artists and take more money. Depending on the type of contract you sign, labels can even tell you what type of music to make, the cover art to use, and the lyrics to write. That is if they let you write your own lyrics, which, as Lupe Fiasco told us, sometimes they have teams of people ready for you to write your songs for you. It's pretty crazy. I did a whole video on it, so you should check it out after this one. But the focus of this video isn't the money that artists are making, it's the music itself. So even though the internet allows allows for more freedom than ever before, record labels were able to weasel their way back into the control room of the music industry. And I'd argue that in some senses, record labels have more control now than they did back in the day. And that's because they can promote songs in ways that seem organic, deceiving the listener, and thanks to things like 360 deals, record labels have much more control over the artists and the actual music. Obviously, back in the day, you typically needed a record label to even be successful in the music industry, but nowadays labels have a much more sneaky way of controlling what you hear. And that's what I'm trying to get at, so don't get mad at me in the comments for that statement. But what does all this mean for the music itself? How are these record labels ruining music? What does all this have to do with the chart that I showed in the beginning? Well, there is an almost direct correlation with when Napster started in 1999 and the lack of key changes in hit songs. Following the introduction of streaming services and the control record labels gained in the early 2000s, you can see the graph begin to stagnate. And I saw a lot of debate about whether or not key change is an indicator of good music or what this could mean for the industry. But one thing is for sure, and that's the fact that the biggest songs in the music industry are very similar. And it's not just key changes. Popular music has been changing in many other different ways. Scientists have studied 464,000 songs and found that both melodies and sounds of instruments are becoming much more similar. Songs are also becoming shorter because of this, and streaming platforms are prioritizing those shorter songs, mainly because shorter songs are less likely to be skipped. And even if we disregard the studies that I just mentioned, you don't really need one to see that the majority of popular music is painfully similar in its respective genres. I believe a lot of this is due to the fact that when record labels gained back their influence after briefly losing it, they began developing technology that would make them even better at promoting generic popular music. And from a business standpoint, it makes sense that a label would want to put out safe music that they know people will like. In the past 2 decades, labels have even acquired technology that they can use to analyze music and predict what songs will be hits. They can use services such as Hit Predictor or Shazam to see what songs will blow up. Apparently, Hit Predictor was able to predict 48 out of the top 50 radio hits in 2013. There are actually even entire companies such as Next Big Sound which are dedicated to analyzing music and finding the next big sound. Previously, executives at record labels would just make these decisions based on their gut, but now they can rely on this data. And you're probably thinking that if labels keep pumping out this generic music, people will eventually get tired of it. And while that may be true for some people, science says it actually isn't for the majority.
I dropped my salad. Damn it. My salad is all over the floor. Great. Nah. TikTok for sure is ruining people's attention span though. Which in turn is literally why music, songs in general nowadays are just short as fuck. Yo, people will literally say that a song is fire just from hearing like 15 seconds of it on TikTok. Like, yo, this whole, oh my God, I love that song. Yeah, I heard it on TikTok. Bro, you seen it? You heard it in a meme? And it's like, once the official song drops, it's like, it's kind of just the same part that was in the initial blow up over and over again.
In a study done by Columbia University in 2006, they showed some people music websites with a bunch of songs and told them to download their favorites. Some sites had rankings of the most popular songs and some didn't. It showed that people who saw the rankings were more likely to download the popular songs. They then did a second experiment where they did the same thing, but this time they sent out websites with the actual download statistics and then some websites with fake download statistics. The experiment proved again that believing that a song is more popular made people more likely to download it. Another study done in 2011 showed
that is what we call bandwagon. That is the bandwagon effect.
shows that the brain produces dopamine when people hear songs that they have played and heard before. So essentially what this all means is that a label can have teams of people working on making a boring song. They can put the song onto the streaming services and manipulate it so it gets more popular. You hear it over and over again and you end up liking it, and boom, you have a chart-topping Hot 100 #1 song, and you're rich and you're famous and the label's making tons of money. And for all those reasons, this is why I believe that greedy corporations are ruining popular music. And even though popular music is super generic and it's only made for the purpose of making money, there are more talented, unique, and diverse artists out now than there ever has been before. Independent artists are actually the fastest growing group in the recording industry right now. And thanks to the internet, we can fight the tyrannical record labels by supporting small and independent artists. If we take a look at the graph I showed earlier,
it's gonna be impossible though, bro, because people literally, the way the internet is now, is they're just gonna who everybody. Who? It's literally just gonna be like that. So I can't tell you how many times that people if you don't know like a mainstream artist or a big artist, there's just people that go around saying, "How do you not know who this is? How do you not know da da da? How have you not heard this song?" I feel like those, I feel like people like that are literally getting paid to be that person to make other people feel like they're missing out on something. How do you not know who this person is? Da da da. Meanwhile, if there's like an upcoming artist, people be like, "Who? Who the fuck is that?"
Media platforms like YouTube, TikTok, and others make up about 36% of the different ways in which people listen to music, and these platforms are a lot less biased. The internet has created so many opportunities for artists to make a living creating their art all on their own without the help of a record label. Thanks again to Surfshark for sponsoring this video. Make sure to check out the link in the description and use code MattyB for a fat 83% off and 3 extra free months.
Damn. Good video, man. W video, man. He always got like some good shit, man. The good motherfucking topics. Y'all see that shit with
There have been many of times I've heard 15 seconds snippet of a song from TikTok and thought it was good. Then once I listened to the whole song, it turned out to be ass. I automatically unlike, unfollow and block the artist.
Damn! Nah, there is definitely times where it's like you'll hear a clip of a song and that shit will sound fire. But then you hear that one song and you're like, even when it gets to that part, you're like, damn, what the fuck? Like, damn, even the snippet that I heard don't even sound the same. Cause it's like in a mixture with the rest of the damn project, bro. Yeah, it just kind of sucks. But I feel like stuff like this,